So what happened was they had this court order from a judge. You have to pay SNAP. You have to steal money from other things in the executive branch. Some of them which were like specific child food programs. The judge is ordering Trump, take money from this, take money from that, as if that's a judicial function, as if he's not completing a grotesque separation of powers violation, effectively becoming the super president over the elected president. And the Trump had said, well, we're going to appeal that. But while that order was in place, some states sent in basically invoices to the federal government that were not authorized for payment, but they got paid anyway. Think of it as an oversight. And now the Trump administration is saying, hey, to you states that effectively stole this money, we want it back, or you're going to suffer consequences. Now we have this tension, this conflict between the federal government and the state governments, just as if we have tension between the executive branch and between the legislative branch. These are all political arguments that should be left to the political branches, the Article 1, Article 2, legislative and executive branch, or the Article 2 executive branch and the states as independent sovereign entities in our federal system of government. The courts ought to have nothing to do with this. And when the courts step in the manner they've been stepping in, it corrupts that political process. Remember, Article 1 legislative, political branch of government, elected. Article 2 executive, political branch of government, elected. Article 3 judicial is not elected because it's supposed to be apolitical, not involved in making political decisions, simply adjudicating cases and controversies before it. And when they step in, when the courts step in, the unelected black robe tyrannical inferior district trial courts step in, they put a finger on the scale and corrupt the political process. So for any of you dudes who's ever gone through a divorce, you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? A divorce is really a civil dispute in court. And any civil dispute in court is supposed to have two parties, a plaintiff, a defendant, and they're arguing their positions based on law and evidence. And that's all taking place in front of, in theory, an impartial adjudicator, a judge, who's not supposed to be partial to either side. But if your dude has ever gone through a divorce, you very quickly realize that you are in this divorce legal fight. The opposing party is not just your spouse. You are fighting your spouse and the court and the government. It's the wife and the government against the husband. And when the federal judiciary gets engaged here, they are joining a team. They are joining a political team, and that corrupts what's supposed to be a political process, because the political parties, say the legislative and executive branch, they're debating, they're arguing, they're trying to come to some kind of agreement. Maybe they're really close. Maybe they're like, all right, I think within the next day we can close this deal, get something done. And then a court issues an injunction, and the Democrats are like, oh, wait a minute. We just had a new player join our team. Now we don't have to agree. And it disrupts those negotiations. It disrupts the political process because the apolitical judges have intervened. And now nothing happens. And that's to the detriment of our constitutional order. All these judges doing this should be impeached, even if they're engaged in that disruption innocently, without political malice. And we know that's not true. They should be impeached just for that, just for corrupting and disrupting our political process when they're supposed to be apolitical actors within the apolitical Article 3 judicial branch. And of course, the hectic back and forth between all these courts and the Supreme Court creates chaos. So here we have a report. This is published yesterday, early in the morning. Supreme Court grants Trump's administration SNAP appeal. Americans are not okay with 60% of SNAP benefits going to illegals or to the corruption in the distribution of SNAP benefits. But I have to tell you, I don't know what the timing of this is with all the other orders and motions and arguments being made on the SNAP issue among various courts, at least two separate federal district courts in the First Circuit alone. And if you've ever, of course, most of you have not, but the federal court system does not work like this. It works in slow motion. It's intended to be a deliberative process. It's not supposed to be this, ADHD, hypersonic, reflexive kind of governmental institution. It's normally extremely slow. It can take months or even years to get anything like progress out of the federal courts until they become politicized and effectively become a super legislative branch or a super executive branch in government. It's a complete corruption of our legislative process. Supreme Court grants Trump's snap appeal. And then this is later, this is late yesterday, breaking. First Circuit Court of Appeals rejects Trump's Department of Justice request to pause a judge's order to pay up SNAP funds. No one can keep track of what's going on in all these cases simultaneously. It's hard enough to do. It was hard enough to do with the National Guard cases, where you have Judge Sarah, Karen Immelgut, Sarah Ellis, different district courts giving different orders, different types of orders, all about National Guard deployment. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, different 3-judge panels giving different rulings. Then the Ninth Circuit rehearing these cases en banc. Then the Supreme Court agreeing to hear the case and sending out requests for additional argument on specific issues. This is all chaos that's being caused by the overreach, the violence to our constitutional order of these Article 3, unelected black robe, tyrannical inferior district trial court judges every single time. And then the Senate Democrats get to jump in and say, oh, look, we have the courts on our side. It's not just a political discussion with the executive branch anymore. Now Trump has to argue against us, the Article 1 legislative branch, and the new member on our team, a federal judge. Late last night, Trump ordered once again by court to pay the full SNAP to hungry people. By the way, that First Circuit Court of Appeals decision is it can only be described as feckless. So it doesn't argue anything on the merits. It says, all right, the trial court, the unelected black robe, tyrannical inferior district trial court judge John McConnell, who bought his federal bench seat for $700,000 from Senator Whitehouse of Rhode Island. That's what happened there in this lawyer's opinion. John McConnell made $700,000 worth of campaign contributions to his state senator, federal senator for his state. And suddenly he became a federal judge. Weird how that happens. John McConnell's wife and daughter both work for NGOs that get millions upon millions of dollars in funding from the federal government, funding under attack by Trump policies. I believe McConnell's wife has brought home almost $3 million in income from her job running an NGO that gets this money laundering funds from Congress, at least until Trump was in office. And yet John McConnell doesn't recuse himself. John McConnell issues orders that Trump's supposed to magically come up with money that Congress has not allocated, as if the president, not Congress, has the power of the purse, as if Judge McConnell, not Congress, has the power of the purse. These orders are insane. And when Trump doesn't follow them and they get appealed to the Court of Appeals, the First Circuit Court of Appeals, the First Circuit Court of Appeals says, we're not even going to address this on the merits because Trump's hands are unclean because he didn't obey the first insane order. So the madness just perpetuates. That's the kind of thing Amy Klobuchar is, the woman who eats salad with a comb for your hair. That's the kind of stuff she's complaining about, or crowing about, I should say. This guy too, Kyle Cheney. The First Circuit has denied the Trump administration request to block John McConnell's order requiring full SNAP payments. Again, all the First Circuit said was, we're not even going to listen to any merits arguments, like whether or not Trump actually has the legal authority to do what the Judge McConnell is ordering. We're just going to say that Judge McConnell ordered it and Trump didn't do it. That's it. Justice Ketanji, I'm not a biologist, I don't know what a woman is, now giving orders to about all this on the question of the SNAP funds. Now that the First Circuit Court of Appeals has denied Trump's injunction, Justice Jackson says, all right, now that that's happened, I'm going to give you, Solicitor General John Sauer, until 4 p.m. today to renew your application for a stay of that order. I want to hear a new argument, especially now. Maybe she's thinking that the government shutdown's about to end. Who knows? Well, Ketanji, I'm not a biologist. How would I know what a woman as Jackson is thinking in that noggin of her? Chris, Law Dark Guidance, is following the Trump administration's weekend actions, the state suing over SNAP benefits went back to court in Massachusetts on Sunday, seeking a restraining order to block the administration from acting on its penalty threats. Those would be, of course, this letter they sent out saying, "Hey, you states, you sent in these invoices that were not supposed to be paid, and you were sent the money anyway. That's theft. You stole that money. Send it back, or you'll be punished." And now those states are running to federal court, of course, saying, "Please don't let Trump punish us for stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from the federal government." In a new letter, Trump administration tells federal appeals court that states who instituted full SNAP payments, in other words, sent in invoices that were not authorized and got paid, were unauthorized to do so, and those states are responsible for the consequences of having stolen the money. Stolen the money. The chaos that the federal courts have induced into our body politic is in and of itself grounds for summary impeachment of a dozen or more of them.